Welcome to episode 3 of Shift, Insure, and Inspire. I'm your host, Fabian, and today I'm thrilled to have a truly unique guest joining us. Our guest is a specialist whose work profoundly helps business owners every single day. In this episode, we'll dive into niche specialization in the insurance industry, the pivotal role of risk management in business growth, and the incredible personal journeys that lead to success in this challenging field. Our discussions cover everything from strategic advantages to personal anecdotes to starting out and climbing to the top. Sit back, get inspired, and enjoy the show. Rocio, welcome to the show, episode 3 of Insure and Inspire, the entrepreneur's journey. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Fabian. Super excited to be on it.
So first and foremost, I want to say thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it because, when I look at your profile, I just see like you're very busy. You got a lot of things going on. So making time for today's episode was, I'm really thankful for it. So thank you. Appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about what you do, because I think it's super important for our viewers. Our viewers are used to interviews with business owners, talking about all the different types of things that go on in the business world. Our show today is a little unique because you are in business, but you serve the business owners. And so I want you to shed a little bit of light on your, what agency you work with, what you do. Let's start there.
I am Rocio Luna. I'm a workers' compensation specialist, and I specialize in lowering down EMRs to rock bottom. So if you go into any of my social media, that's literally the one sentence that I have in all platforms. And for those viewers that don't know what EMR is, it refers over to the experience modification rate. So an EMR applies, this rate is applied to all employers in California. But the reason I have it on my platforms, it's because I specialize in 2 areas, which is construction and staffing. So the EMR is very particular and niche in those 2 areas. It's very important. It's basically what drives the premium in insurance. And this rate will basically determine if you get the job or not. And it's very important to a lot of contractors because they could not apply for certain jobs if you don't have this EMR under control. What I do is very niche and tailored towards specifically, contractors and anyone with a focus in controlling their workers' compensation claims.
You touched on the word niche. For people viewing this, some of them are going to be in the insurance industry. How important do you think niching is? How important is that to someone's career in the insurance space?
I think niching is very important, and I think it has helped me out a lot. They'll give an example. So I know what's going on in the construction world, but I have no idea what's going on in retail or pharmaceuticals or tech. I have no idea what's going on, what the best markets are, what the pricing is looking for. I can get you a quote, but my specialty will not be in those areas. But I think when you are any area having a niche, it's that I can't think of the saying on top of my head, but you can't be a king of all. What is it? The king of all trades?
Yes.
A jack of all trades.
When you're not niche focused, you're a jack of all trades, right? And a master of none. I know where you're going with that, and I do believe in that. And look, for our viewers out there, whether they're business owners or insurance producers, I think especially those just starting off, because those that are a little bit more seasoned probably know this already. But I don't think there's anything wrong that we don't know about the other industries. In fact, I think the fact that you know so much about one, niche or maybe a couple, because I know some producers focus on a few different, like in your case, you have 2 different focus points. I don't think there's anything wrong if someone's laser focused on 2 different industries and they know everything about it, because they're now the subject matter expert. They're going to be sought after. I'm assuming people, you get referrals all the time just based on those 2 niches, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I get approached. I get a lot of questions. Actually, I'm very surprised, but lately I've been getting a lot of requests on EMR training. So I've been getting requests from companies, human resources, saying, hey, can you come in and do a training for us? Or can you give my superintendent and the safety guys a basic brief of what an EMR is? Because in that world, it's very specific. to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely with you on that, that being niche is very important.
I got to ask you, how did you start in the industry? Everybody has, I always hear unique stories about how people got their start. How did you start in the industry?
So I started in the industry really young. So I'm 30 years old. I started right off
Mhm.
college when I graduated. I was 22 years old. And I landed into the insurance world by, I guess, by luck. So I was, after I graduated, I applied to all entry level positions, and it was, entry level claims, sales. Yeah, it was a bunch of like entry level sales because I knew I wanted to do something with sales. And
Mhm.
I went into this insurance broker out in Huntington Beach, and the claims assistant had quit on them, so they were really looking for someone to hire right on the spot, specific to be specifically in to be bilingual. So I came in and they said, "Look, we can give you the job like right now because we really need someone right now." And I took it because I really needed a job right now because I just graduated college. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I had no idea what claims were. I thought maybe I was going to deal with like auto claims because when I was,
Mhm.
22 years old and I thought about insurance, all I could think about was my own personal auto. I
Yeah.
didn't know there was, business, workers' comp, uh, general liability, any of that
The
stuff.
whole world.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just
There's,
thought, insurance, you had, 'cause the commercial auto and the claims that you get out of it was, like car accidents. That's where my head was at.
yeah.
And pretty
Right.
much I got in there, worked my way up. I fell in love with claims. I had no idea what I was doing. I could tell you that for like the first year, I was really struggling, and Google was my best friend.
Mm. Well, who has a great start? I mean, unless you have like maybe parents that run an agency and you've been involved in that space like the whole time. I think everybody gets, when they first start, they start off pretty rough around the edges. I know I did. I was so introverted when I first started. I was 17 years old and I was training, and and I was working on getting my license, and I was just kind of like shadowing people, and I was like, dude, I don't know how in the world I'm gonna do this because I was just so introverted, so quiet, hadn't really talked to anybody. And my first job, I think was in retail selling kids clothing. And I was like, dude, I don't know how in the world I'm going to do this, and, fast forward 6 months later, I was, basically assisting and managing that office and just kind of taking care of things and having meetings with one person, two people, families. And, you have to just start, I think sometimes, and then things progress from there. You deal with mid-sized businesses, right?
Yes,
You're in middle market.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, and so you have to. I mean, some people, I've heard of this. Some people just start in middle market, which I think is completely realistic. You can still do that, but there's a lot you need to learn,
Hmm.
right? I mean, in order for you to get to a point where you can now, manage the risk for these mid-sized businesses, because it really is a serious thing that you're involved in. You really are helping these business owners at a high level. I know that, in middle market, especially in middle market, the word risk management is used a lot. And so what are some of the ways, so that our viewers, business owners, and even producers too that are just starting, what are some of the ways that producers can help business owners manage the risk?
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct because risk management involves you taking care of your money, making sure it grows, and you not losing it. So that's why you have
Mhm.
insurance. So people buy insurance in case to protect their assets in case of a risk. So they want to make sure that if they have this coverage and something, God forbid, something happens, they're going to pay a deductible. They're covered, and that's really all that they care about at the end of the day. And as a insurance producer, you want to make sure that you assess every company correctly because every company does have different risk towards it. So in the middle market, it is very important because now you're dealing instead of you dealing with 20 people, now you're dealing with 20 people and above. So my clientele ranges from 50 people to almost 500 people. Every company is structured differently, so you have management, then you have supervisors, they have employees, and it's very important that you have knowledge of all of this because it's a flow. So, if one of these areas break down, now you have a disruption. and you want to analyze and make sure that, okay, do we have everything keyed down here? Do we have our SOPs? So SOPs, for those people that may not know what SOP stands for, it stands for Standard Operating Procedures. And pretty much it just means that you have a step by step program on what to do in case of any, well, a step-by-step program to do anything, right? So you have SOPs for when
Yeah.
you onboard people, you have an SOPs of how you collect money, SOPs on how you handle insurance. But one thing that you need to manage, make sure is that you need to see is, for example, if this contractor is he driving material? Is he a plumber? Is this person doing concrete? Are they doing excavation? So everyone has a little different niche to it, but you want to see where
Yep.
your areas of danger are. So, okay, we have a lot of guys on the road. So now we obviously our risk is managing that fleet, making sure there's very minimal accidents, making sure that your cars are correctly covered, that you have the right
Yep.
limit, everyone's in the program, good safety record. So you want to, when you're assessing a company, you want to look at what the risks are, what their liabilities are, and then also
Yep.
make sure that they're insured. So middle-sized markets, they all carry workers comp, but one thing that they might not have, or they might have every little bit, is like umbrella excess. So they may, someone who has a large fleet, they definitely need to carry more than $1 million in
Yeah.
coverage, because they have,
Yeah.
50 cars on the road. God forbid they have a death or a horrible accident. That 1 million is like you already blew through it. So you want to make sure that you assess every single risk.
Love that. Love that. Now I got to ask you this. So you're dealing with business owners with personnel starting at minimum 50 all the way to 500, right? Definitely middle market. Now there are business owners out there that are really looking to take their business to the next level. From an insurance advisory standpoint, Rocio, what would you recommend for those business owners? Like if you're a business owner with 10 employees and they're thinking about growth, they're thinking about expansion, they're thinking about more revenue and all the things that come with growing their business from an insurance standpoint, what three tips would you give a business owner?
Everybody who's in the middle market, they all started off with one person or two people, which is a business owner. From going to small business to middle market, and then from middle market, there's different little tiers of where they want to go. My advice for business owners, for small business owners that want to go into that, who want to grow, because everybody essentially wants to grow. I would say number one
Right.
thing is make sure that you have your documentation in place. And when I mean documentation, I'm referring to, your basics, like your employee handbook, your time cards,
Mm-hmm.
how you're keeping record of everything. If you're production, you want to make sure that your sales are good, that you're keeping notes of it. And you also want to have a great culture. So culture is very important. So if you want to take your team into the next level, you want to make sure that all of your players are in the same boat, and that you tell them about your vision. So all entrepreneurs are visionaries, and I have not met one business owner who doesn't talk about their goals or where they want to go next. So I always say definitely it's culture and communication.
Very good. All good pieces of information. I think that's very important. Even if you're a small business and not quite at the mid-size level, these are the three kinds of things that could definitely shape a business, right? And get it going and absolutely get it prepared for that next level and growth and from an insurance standpoint. I love that. That's very good. Now, switching gears a little bit, we've talked about some advice that we can give business owners. Now, switching gears to producers, what are some of the habits that you've seen from a producer standpoint that can make a producer and then that could actually just, tank a producer?
So I would say number one habit is organization, because I think that's the number one key that for anyone, it could take, for business owners too. If you're organized, you'll know how your day's going. You have a plan on what to do. If you're disorganized, you're going to let the day you know, take care of you. So you want to make sure
Yeah,
you run your day instead of the day
that is
running
so
your day. So I would say that's like probably the number one thing that can make you or break you.
Are you talking specifically like time blocking? Like, hey, look, from this time to this time, this is all we're doing. And then from this time to this time, this is what we're pursuing. We're doing marketing, or we're doing phone calls, or we're doing follow-ups. Is that what
Yes,
you're referring to?
yes. When I first started in sales, I didn't have any whatsoever guidance. They kind of just said, okay, well, if you want to knock yourself out, try it out. Here's
Mm,
some leads, and go on, like try, figure it out yourself.
yeah.
I didn't have any guidance on what to do or how to do it, but thank God I had the claims knowledge. So I was managing claims
Mhm.
6 years before I went to onto sales. So that really helped me out. But yes, going back to the habits, yes, organization, knowing, time blocking, and also keeping track of your appointments. Um, Definitely you want to make sure that when you're creating your book of business, you communicate and you are on top. If you tell a prospect, I'm going to email you, you email them the same day that you said you were going to contact them, because you want to make sure that you want to start building the trust of your prospects.
Absolutely. Yeah, that contributes to your reputation
Hmm.
or lack of reputation, right? Yeah, 100%. I love that too. You mentioned something right now that I think we absolutely have to talk about. We cannot not talk about this. You said when you first started, that you were kind of just left like kind of on your own to just figure it out. We talked about this in an earlier call too, where we're like, dude, agents, when they start in the industry, it is very common for agents to kind of start, even if they're in an environment where there's a lot of producers in there, they really kind of start and they're almost on their own. What do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts on that? I'm really curious to know what you think about that.
I think that's an area that our industry fails in. I think we need to get better in instructing and giving guidance towards the newbies, because there's nothing worse than sitting at a desk or not knowing what to do, feeling trapped. I know when I first started making cold calls, that's how I felt my book of business. I was like, oh my god, this is horrible. Like how do I keep this up? Like it's been a whole month, no appointments. Like, how am I going to eat? How am I going to make money? It starts to get to you. Um, and then what, you start to build it, but definitely like if you don't know what to say, a script, um, and it's it could be very devastating. So I think as an industry, we need to get better in preparing, at least having a structure, and definitely for agencies, if you want to grow your sales team, I think having a sales manager that's supportive, give them guidance, being there for the first month or so. And then I say this because everybody has a different learning
Yeah.
curve. So I definitely have seen people that have gone like just slowly over the time, and then they reach their
Hmm.
goal. I have people, they do up and down, and then some people are just like doesn't nothing happens, and then all of a sudden they take
Yeah.
off. So I think it's just being continuous, momentum, and having a lot of faith.
Oh,
Like,
God.
when I first started, that's all I had. I just had faith. I was like, some way, somehow, I'm gonna figure this
Hmm.
out.
We're gonna switch gears here a little bit again. You talked about this. We're gonna do a lot of that right now. You mentioned the word faith right now, Rocio, and we're gonna get back to some of the other topics that you brought up too. But you mentioned the word faith, and right now, first thing I thought of that you reminded me of is my dad. I don't know if you know this story, but I've posted enough about it just because I thought it was so important to share it. But my dad passed away December 1st last year, and in that conversation, my last conversation with my dad that I had, in that conversation, he told me, he goes, son, never let your fear be bigger than your faith. Never. Never
Hmm.
let your fear be bigger than your faith. And 4 hours later, he passed away. And that message resonated with me when he said it, but when my dad left us, it just stuck. You know what I mean? It's ingrained in my mind now, and it's so important because I've dove deep into that word faith. And it's always been there running in the background, and it's always been a concept that I understood and I resonated with. But now more than ever, when I do anything, whether it is I'm going down this path to improve physically or mentally or with my career, the word faith is so dominant. It is so important to tap into that. And you just talked about that. And so you've had this journey where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to do this, one whole month without appointments. And you stood in there, like you just hung in there. And, I know a lot of, producers that have come and gone. Uh, and I know a
Hmm.
lot of people in business that have opened up, started, they're enthusiastic. Reality sets in, things obviously start to not go their way because that's how it is. Have you ever seen that diagram of like people draw the business plan and then, when soon as they start, it just goes everywhere. It's like crazy.
Yep.
And so let's dive into that a little bit more, please, because you brought it up and I think it's so important. It's one of the things that no one talks about. No one talks about it, and I think it ties into a little bit of vision and culture. Talk to me a little bit about that. Let's share that with our viewers.
Faith is big because that's all you could really have when, because like you used to have mentioned, life is just, it's like this, you don't know which way it's going to
Yep.
tug. And that's a beautiful part of life, right? It has its ugly and beautiful moments. But and faith stems onto your why. When you do something, there's a why behind this. And if your why is strong enough for you to keep faith all the way through, then it's always going to be there. So I think having faith, and faith stems from heart. So if you just have whatever you have your mind in and go in fully with your heart and your best intention, that's honestly all that it's going to take. Because believe me, when you have those really bad days, everything's going south. It's gonna get over. It's gonna might be a couple of days or a couple of weeks of this bad thing, but there's gonna be some sun coming into it, and it all stems from faith. So you have to just be in there and just know that this is just part of the
Mhm.
journey. But you have to always go back into your why. Like, why is it that you're doing
Yeah.
this? And
Yeah.
your vision has to be clear, and everybody has a
Yeah.
different why.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to that picture and that faith that you
I
have
love that.
inside.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mentioned that in an earlier post last week, I believe, where we talked a little bit about that because I think we all go through those little funky moments. All go through them.
Hmm.
And people try sometimes to mask it, and that's okay. I get it, but you can't fake the funk. Everyone goes through a funk and a point in their life when they're like, dude, like, this is hard, or this is challenging. Like, what do I do? Like, or where they go through, a situation where they don't feel confident enough for that next step or that next level in their journey. And I'm just like, you know what? You just touched on this. Connect all of that to your why. Why did you start?
Hmm.
What was the reason? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And it's so important to connect that to your why, because that's how you increase your confidence. That's how you increase your understanding for what it is you're going through, right? Why you're going through it, because it's something bigger than just maybe that challenge that you're facing.
Yeah, and it all comes down to believing in your
Yeah.
message. So you have to believe whatever your faith, whatever you're doing in business, whether you're selling or if you're making food, whatever it is, you have to believe that whatever you're doing is the best for that cause. If I'm like me, if I'm reaching out to business owners to help them manage the risk and write their insurance, I know I'm going in with the best intention of me giving them my all and assessing their risk and knowing that if anything goes south, I'm going to be there to back them up. And that, this is a
Yeah.
partnership. And I believe
Yeah.
because I know what I've done and I know that I could help them out just, with their trust. But if that person or whoever you're speaking to doesn't believe it, and it might be because you don't believe in what you're saying, you want to stand back and, okay, like, what is it that I'm trying to connect, or you need to circle back into your why, because it is true, everybody goes through these funky
Right.
seasons, and sometimes the funky season is just part of it, because you feel maybe you have imposter syndrome for
Mhm.
whatever it is, because if you're feeling like a little out of it, it might be because you've been out of touch with yourself, or you haven't had your
You're
self-care,
not in
which is
alignment,
really
right? You're not just in alignment with
big.
yourself. Yeah,
Yep.
very true. Very, very true. I love that. A lot of good stuff here. A lot of good stuff, Rocio. And I think it's so important for our viewers, whether they're in business, whether they're an insurance, advisor, personal or commercial. This is the kind of stuff that I think doesn't get talked a lot about, in business. But I think it's so important, because I don't know if you've heard the expression, everywhere you go, there you are. Right. And so if
Hmm.
you're in a funk, at home, and you go to work, there you go, you're in a funk, and if you don't tap like into your why, and you're not taking a moment to take a step back and figure out what's going on and address it, there you go, you're going to be in that funk, and you're not going to produce at the levels you can, and so I really, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Man, there was another topic I wanted to talk to you about that you brought up right now. You're bringing up so many good points, so let's do this. I really want to shed light on your agency. I think it's important, I really do. So talk to me a little bit about your agency, Modern Rain Insurance.
So I work for Modern Rain Insurance Brokers. We are a boutique brokerage firm out in Mission
Mhm.
Viejo. And pretty much our niche is the same thing as what I do. So we're very heavily involved in claims management. We help out blue collared companies in providing them with safety, with resources to human, resources as to human resources, safety, uh, and then for some who would like to get more hands on, they might get like a case manager assigned to
Mhm.
them or nursing, but the whole aspect of us of modern rain, and they also have the word modern
Yeah.
rain to it. Like we want to be more of a more so
Sure.
like for us, like I don't know how else to say it. We're very big on collaborating and not
Right.
competing. So we kind of we're very open to working with different agencies. You know, when we say this, like different agencies, different agents, because we believe that working as a whole is a lot better than being like, oh, we do this, we don't share our clients, we don't share our secret
Yeah.
sauce. Like, no, we put it out there because we want people to learn about it. We want to give the information. We want to teach other producers who might not know about
Yep.
these things. Yeah, there's these programs and if you want our help, you can reach out to us or vice versa. If you want your client just to get these services from us, then have that. But we're very
That's good.
open to that. But that's our whole like
It's a
spiel.
modern approach
Hmm.
to doing business, and a modern approach to insurance. And look, let's be honest. If you want to be a leader in the space, you need to understand, number one, there's going to be others in the space as well that are also leading. But if you want to be a leader in the
Hmm.
space, you got to be a leader, right? And I don't
Hmm.
think, in my mind at least, and maybe you agree with this, but in order to really be a leader, you cannot not have that quality of collaboration. You have to know how to collaborate. Collaboration in business is critical. There are things that I can help someone with, and there are things that someone can help me with. And if we're not
Hmm.
collaborating because we're so, like, I don't know, we're just so, you know yeah,
Selfish.
it really is a selfish thing, you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, who loses is the business owner. And we're here
Hmm.
to serve the business owner, especially, the small to mid-sized businesses, they get hammered from all different angles, right? There's so many different things going on, and they need people to really truly help them. And if you're just so stuck in your way and you're not thinking, modern, you're going to miss out on certain things that can help improve you as an individual, your agency, your business. And then that's going to translate into how you serve the business owner. I think that's very
Yeah.
important to know. That's really good stuff too to mention. Let me ask you something. So, we're talking about serving and helping, and taking care of the business owner, which is extremely important. Is really at the top of the list and priority of what we need to do. But one of the other things that I love to talk about, and I think it's something that I've noticed in our industry that isn't really a thing, and it's not always, like, emphasized, is, you know, um, your health. How important is health to you? How important is that, like, fitness and, activity and remaining active? Like, we have busy careers, but, like, how important is that to you?
Okay, so your health is your
Yeah.
wealth. And I mean, we all could relate to a day where we've been sick or we had the flu, we couldn't get out of bed. and we just feel like total
Mm.
shit. We're like, oh, we have so many things to do, and I can't even get up, I can't even
Yeah.
breathe. And then, after that's gone, you're like, oh my God, I appreciate my nose. I appreciate I could get out of bed and not have that aching feeling. I could eat. But to your point, your health is very important. Um, taking care of yourself, not only from a physical aspect of it, because if you feel good about yourself, you also have a higher confidence, and I'm a big believer in that. But it's also what's going internally, because you could be um, somewhat a fit person, but if you are just chugging down energy drinks all day, every day, which I'm guilty of. But I take the sugar free ones. But if
Drink
you're drinking a lot of
a lot of
caffeine,
coffee. Yeah.
yeah, drinking a lot of coffee, but you're not taking that all that energy out through physical. You're just sitting, and that actually builds a lot of cortisol in your
Yeah.
gut. Your gut, it all comes down to your gut, and having activity at least. I could tell you that when I've had really stressful days, and I work out, because I work out in the mornings. That really helps me out to get prepared. While I'm during my workout, I'm thinking, or I'm not thinking. Sometimes I just don't think. I just kind of like, I just rather, just think about the weights. My head is so much clearer. I'm just in the better space. I'm more
Yep.
controlled. I'm less
Yep.
irritable. And just having a good heart, because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be here for the
Yeah.
long run. And I think in all industries, but we sit a lot. So you also want to make sure that you have
Yeah.
your movement, because I'm over here talking about safety with the truckers, safety with the manufacturers, how exercising is important, but us agents in the insurance world, we're sitting
All
all
day.
day, so we also have to have some walking in there, because you don't we you don't want to get many years stuck to the chair, because that's going to create very make your
Yep.
muscles weak, bring in other
Yep.
health problems. So health
Exactly.
is
You're
very
not
important.
moving. You're not, there's no blood flow. And blood flow is
Hmm.
like critical to nutrition and to oxygen and to all the
Hmm.
different components that contribute to someone's health. And so you're dead on the you're like right on the money, but because it's so important to move, and we sit. That's all we do is sit. We just
Hmm.
sit. And then, after a few hours of like marketing or cold calling, we're like, hey, what's for lunch? What do we go eat? And then you go and stuff your face with a bunch of stuff that's just completely not good for you. And I'm not trying to get preachy about it, but I know that there are so many people in our industry in specific that are just amazing at what they do. And God, how amazing would it be for them to, to serve an extra 2 years, 3 more years, more business owners, and just do more things with their time if they were
Hmm.
just a little bit more healthier. I see that as like a priority because, in my family in specific, you know, um, diabetes runs in the family. And so for me,
Oh yeah, mine
yeah.
too.
And so like for me, I'm like, okay, like if I can avoid it with what I'm eating, like, okay, let's just switch it up. I don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be unhealthy because all this is for nothing. What's all this for if that's the case? That's short
Hmm.
lived. And like you said, I'm in it for the long term. I always think, me and my wife, we talk a lot about future, and I'm always constantly thinking about the grandkids. Like I'm looking to be an effect in my life, but not just for myself. I'm already like I'm thinking about the grandkids I haven't even met. You know what I mean? And but in order to get to that point, like I got to be healthy. I got to be right. I got to be able to at least, you know, like play with them and do things with them, that kind of stuff matters. And so like, insurance and all that stuff, so important for me. It's at the top of the list, but health I think is extremely important too. And I do the same thing. I'll work out in the morning, although sometimes, I don't make it in the morning, but I go in the evenings, but I make it a priority. Like I don't miss because it's vital. Like you said, when you go and you leave the gym, especially if you go in the morning, like you've already got the hard stuff out of the way. Everything else is super
Hmm.
easy. You know what I mean?
That's exactly why I do it, because I know if that's like if I so for me, at the end of my day, I'm just
Mhm.
exhausted. And I've done it where I've worked out at the end of the day, and I just feel like I half-assed it. I'm like, oh, you know
Yep.
what? Okay, it's cool. Like I'll go to
Yep.
sleep right now. But if I do it first thing in the morning, I'm like, just okay. I'm so pumped up. I'm fasted. um, because I go around like
Right
4:30 in the
on.
morning. So I'm just like, all right, I'm ready to get my day
Yeah.
started.
Yeah. And you're fasted too, which is prime. It's prime
Mhm.
time to get, a workout in, and then you're off to the races. Very good stuff.
Yeah. So how did you get into the
Oh
insurance
my God.
industry?
So I told you I was 17 when I started, to kind of shadow and to learn, but I really got a taste for it when I was like 16. So 15, 16. So I used to get into a lot of trouble in high school. I had a lot of energy and I just did, school was just very boring for me. So I found myself getting in a lot of trouble. And there were times where, I would have 5 days off from school, if you know what I mean. I got to spend it. And so I would, I wasn't going to sit at home. In my family, there is none of that. There was none of that sitting
Mhm.
around. I mean, if you're in trouble on top of that, like you're going to work. Right. And so my mom's Salvadorian. She don't play. And so, with her, she was like, you're either going to help me out with the garden in the back and you're going to plant, which I planted basically every tree in my mom's backyard, or you're going to go to work with your brother. Cause at that time, my brother was already at a high school. He was already working. And so, hilarious. I would go with him, and I was the sign boy. This was during file days where things were like filed by paper. I was the file boy, and I just got exposed to the culture. I got exposed. You talked about culture. There was a lot of culture. My brother was running that, and there was a lot of culture there, and there was cells and helping people and that kind of thing, and they were making a living from it. So I was like, you know what, this might just be, this would definitely be a good use of my energy because I had a lot of it. So, out of high school, well, actually, while I was in high school, I got a seasonal job. But then right as soon as I graduated, my brother was offered a position to go and grow the company he worked for in San Diego. And so I'm like, I just graduated. I liked it. I had an idea of like what to do. And so I was like, I would like to do it. So we moved to San Diego. I was 17 years old, moved to San Diego, and we grew a lot of. We opened up a lot of offices there. And so originally we started with one, and then I managed it, and then I branched out, managed another one, and it went really well. The key here, though, Rocio, was we didn't own it. And so when the owner decided to sell his agency, he sold it. And so, off we went. Like we were, it just didn't work out after he sold it. You know how that goes. They just started restructuring, closing certain things down. And so I was like faced with a situation because my wife and I had just had our first child, you know, and
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
And so they just sold the company. I had my first child, my daughter, and they were like, hey, you know what? You can actually stick with the company, but you got to move up north, and you got to start, an agency from scratch. And I'm like, dude, I just had my daughter. I don't even know. I'm not doing that. And so I took a 5 year, about 5, 6 year hiatus, and I went to work for some banks. And so I learned a lot of sales working as an insurance agency. But when I went to work for the banks, I polished up a lot of, a lot of my skills, right? Because now you're working in a corporate environment, you're having meetings with people in group settings and executives and this, that, and the other. And so I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about processes and handling certain files and accounts and all kinds of stuff. Actually, when I left the bank, I was managing escalations for the office of the president and CEO, and I was helping them create process flows on how to create, how to fix all that. And so, long story short, I always had this itch, right? I was like, man, I loved insurance. I just liked it. I loved the way it worked. I know that I can do well at it. I'm a lot older now. I know a lot more. So my brother had started another agency at that point, with another partner, and they had reached out to me and they were like, hey, do you want to come over? And I was like, you know what, look, here's what I'll do. I'll work at the bank, and then I'll do this part-time. That way I'm not stretching myself out thin. But it was like, not even, I don't even think it was a full 6 months. It was like 5 months. And right after 5 months, I was like, dude, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. My part-time here is creeping up to my full-time here at the bank. I gotta go. And so off I went. I went, and it went really well. We grew that agency for 9 years. We had a lot of success. A lot of people came and went, but we grew that agency to a point where we were all pretty well established and we were, making a living, I'll be honest with you, I had no business starting another agency. I didn't. But the three partners, I became a junior partner after about 5 years of working at that agency. And then, at 9 years, we all kind of started just, having this conversation about like, what should we do here? How do we approach this? And everybody's in their own kind of like stage, in life. And so I was still very interested in running an agency, and I had an opportunity to just start my own. And so I sold my equity in that agency and I started my own agency. I responded to the calling. And so the name is Shift. And it's kind of a selfish name, it actually stands for something. So Shift stands for Shaping Habits, Form Transformation.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
And the reason the reason I named it Shift, and the reason it is that acronym, is because the formation of my agency started at a point, Rocio, where I completely started to shift my mindset, my activities, my habits, everything. And when I started to do that, my life started to change. It started to improve internally, right? And then as a result, it just became, and it was just the byproduct. My relationships improved, everything just changed. And so I'm very fortunate to have had the partners I had and to have had the experiences I've had, because it led me to where I'm at now. But now it's just all about, creating those habits that really help improve the quality of my life. I talk a lot about that in a lot of my content that I put out, because I think it's so important. People they don't stop sometimes, especially in our world. You know how it is. It's go, 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 go. Oh, you need a break? Go, go. Like, it's just constant. And so, I took a moment, to myself, and I stopped, and that was the power move. I'll be honest with you. That was the power move. When I stopped and I took a step back, I realized what I was considering to be the most important was actually not the most important. My relationships with my kids was never bad. It's never been bad. But, the minute I started prioritizing more my family than the career, my career took off, and my family relationship and the dynamic here at home is just so amazing. You know what I mean? It really is different, and it's all credited to the habits, the mindset, the change in activities that was involved in. And so I gave you the long answer, but yeah, I started as when I was 16 years old, and I had this whole long journey of just learning all the different things and picking up all these habits, good and bad. And, you know, as I got a little older, I started cleaning that up, and thankfully I was able to start my own agency, and here I am.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a really great point about family because I mean, you could get all these accolades, the
Mhm.
money, whatever, but what good is it if you're neglecting the most important thing, which is your family? Your family is the one thing that will not walk away from you. You have all these, you could have all these, relationships, but it's business because behind that business is a business owner who also has a
Yeah,
family. So everybody there is standing is ultimately the reason why they wake up at 3 in the morning and they work all the way up till 2 in the morning is for their family because family is number one thing. And I think that's very
yeah.
important to always prioritize your family first because, like that's when everything falls apart. They're the ones who are going to be
A
there
hundred
for you.
percent. 100%. And none of those accolades will create a happy home.
Mhm.
None of them. Nothing will create a happy marriage. Like, me selling, the highest premium policy. Like, none of that. Like, it's all great. It's cool to help, because that's really, again, the priority is to really serve, right? To be a servant, to more, to people around, outside of my family as well. But again, like we talked about earlier, if the nuclear, if what's going on at home is not right, nothing's right. Nothing is
Mhm.
right. And it's crazy too, because my outlook when it came to being in the industry when I was a lot younger was very different. It was mostly salesy, you know what I mean? And people sense that. You know what I mean? People know when you're doing something like that. And now it's more like, actually, I mean, getting paid is the byproduct, but I get paid to make friends. I do, essentially, is what I'm doing. I'm building relationships, good strong relationships, and as the byproduct, I'm making a living from it. but I see it different. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
very important what you're saying or what we're talking about, because a lot of people, they get caught up in that rat race. And I think it's so important to make a living, so important to generate revenue in your business. And yeah, the goal should be to make more. It should be to, you deserve it. You deserve to live a very abundant life. That is actually our birthright. That's straight out of the Bible. But you cannot neglect. You can't neglect, what's most important. And the only way to realize that if you're caught in that rat race is to stop. Just stop for a second and assess and take a moment. And for me, like I said, that was the power move.
Yeah, that is the power
Yeah.
move. We hear a lot about people going through divorce because someone wasn't paying attention, because someone was at work working too
Mm-hmm.
much, and it creates an imbalance. And vice versa too. You want to make sure that at home things are going, because everybody has problems, whether both business and family ones. But there's nothing better than coming home to a loving family. And in your case, your children and your wife. I'm sure you would do anything in the world for
Thousand
them.
percent, 1,000%. But it's all based on communication. It's all based on
Hmm.
dedication, time, being present. I remember when I was a little boy, I used to always ask my uncles. I was always doing this, by the way. I've always been doing this. This is why this came naturally to me, because I'm like, I've always been curious. So I've always sat with people and just asked them questions. You know what I mean? And I remember growing up, because my father, I didn't grow up with my dad. I would ask my uncles, like, this is for real. Like, I'd be like, hey, Theo, how did you and my tia stay married for so long? Like, how did you do this? And one of the things they would all always say is communication. And I always heard that word come up so many times. And I was like, okay, like talk. But talking is not what they were talking about. It was communicating with the heart, right? And coming out with your feelings and the emotions. And to your point, no, especially in our community, in the
Hmm.
Latino community, we don't touch on those things. I'll give you a story. When my dad was he was young. I don't even think he was 13 yet. My dad was basically asked to leave the house because he was one extra mouth that they couldn't feed. Crazy, right? So at the tender age of, say, 10 to 13, it was that window. He now has to think, how do I feed myself? How do I take care of myself? Okay. He from the very beginning, he was wired to think about survival. That's it. That was his thing. I need to survive, right? My mom, same thing. At a very young age with a newborn, how to make it to this country. I've talked a lot about that. Okay. They were only wired for survival. And it's not just survival that they were wired for. Of course, they experienced love and other emotions, but the priority was survive. They come from countries that were poverty ridden. They didn't have opportunities. They came here and they needed to survive. Right? Cool, great. Well, now they have kids. There's 3 boys in the family, right? And again, what did they learn to do primarily? Survive. They didn't learn how to articulate themselves. They didn't learn how to deal with their emotions. They didn't learn how to express their emotions. They didn't learn any of that. And so when they did have a difference, right, when there was a dispute, I'm going to be honest here.
Hmm.
This is where we get raw. When there was a dispute inside my mom's heart, maybe my dad's heart, they maybe had some things that were genuinely bothering them. There were things that were really going on, pressures from being a man and having to take care of the family, pressures from, being a mom and raising the kids while husband, whatever, right? But when it came out, Rocio, it came out like venom. It came out like anger. It came out like, guilt. It came out like resentment. It came out bad, like a venom. And so here we were, the 3 boys on the sidelines watching and observing. And so we're thinking and we're recording and we're on and we're learning and we're thinking, oh, this is the way you communicate. This is what we should do.
Hmm.
Oh, dad's drinking. Oh, whatever, right? And so we're picking this up and we're just using that as a reference point now to be a husband, to be a partner, to be a brother, to be a whatever, right? And so, or a business owner or whatever. And so you go out into the world, and here's the point I'm making, and you're operating off of these old concepts that got your previous generation to where they needed to be, survival. Okay, but you're in a world that doesn't operate this way. I mean, there are aspects of the world that do, but now you're playing a different game, especially now. If you're married and you have children, what do you need to do to
Mm-hmm.
break those chains? And that's been the thing. That's why I talked to you about that earlier, when I said, we needed to take a step back and assess and really figure out what was priority and what wasn't. And when it became apparent, obviously, that my priority was family, I needed to adopt new tools. I needed to learn something new. This whole survival mentality, having all these emotions and not talking about it, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And to your point, yeah, we've been raised to be macho, so you don't want to talk about it. Talking about it doesn't make you less of a man. It makes you more of a man, because now you have an extra skill that you've
Mm-hmm.
learned. You've learned how to articulate yourself and express yourself to your partner and say, hey, you know what? You're right. I made a mistake. I shouldn't maybe have done this. Or, you know what? This is the way I was feeling. I apologize. Wow. You know what I mean? And then you move on, and then you continue to grow the relationship and nurture the relationship. And it's so important what you're talking about, because so many of us, we're totally capable of doing it, but we are operating off of an old program that almost prevents us from tapping into that, and
Yeah, and it
yep.
goes back into your habits. But I mean, going back to your point, Fabian, about having a father or a father figure, because some of us didn't grow up with dads in our family, and how many of us did not see
Mm-hmm.
that aggressiveness? Dads didn't see that, when dad would drink or that person would drink, they would get violent, or the words, and they would be mad, and that's something that I'm sure millions of people could relate to. And it goes on because, as a child, that's what you see, and that's what you grow up with. And if you don't start to analyze those things or start to dissect them, when you're older, or because I say this because sometimes there's certain things that have to happen in your life for you to realize things, and everybody has different realization moments and different stages of their life where they say, oh wait, this is wrong, or like how I've been doing it, for 40 years, or x amount of years, it's not coming out correctly. So I think going back and just saying, okay, like, how can I need to fix these issues, because obviously, like, when I yell or I, get aggressive, because people get defensive when they see something, or they've been told
Mm-hmm.
something that's
Yep.
truthful, and that's when they get hurt. And I think that's why people sometimes come off defensive in the sense, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
them reacting to that habit. So it does take a long time, especially if they grew up like that and it's been going on for years. But it also, once you you realize that,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, how can I fix this? Because ultimately, people do, they want to fix it. They want to be happy, and that they don't want to be viewed as the a-hole. Like, oh, that guy, just, you tell him
Yeah.
something, he just blows off and
Yeah.
goes off into this
Or sometimes
rampage.
they don't even, or sometimes they do the exact opposite. I found myself at times, just climbing up. Okay. And you would just go mute. Like that doesn't do anything either.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you have to
silent
learn
treatment.
to articulate your
Mhm.
emotions. You have to, and this is a subject I've talked about too. You have to learn how to become emotionally intelligent. How to become
EQ.
intelligent with your emotions, how to control them. And I talked about this too in my last podcast, and that, you better believe that it plays a role in business. Absolutely, it plays a role
Oh
in
yeah,
business. If you don't
absolutely.
know how to control your emotions, if you're not emotionally intelligent, if something that was said or done triggered you and you don't know how to control that, and in business, dude, like, you're going to lose 100%. And it's not about winning and losing, but you're
Mhm.
going to you're going to find yourself not having the experience that you want to have. And it starts with your
Mhm.
mindset, starts with the programming that you received early on. And it's so important to take inventory of that and to assess it. We all talked about this too recently. I think and I don't know if you agree with this, but I really do believe we are all courageous people. We all have courage in us. We do. We just got to tap into it, and it takes courage. It takes tremendous courage, Rocio, to say, you know what, I have these flaws. These are my flaws, and I want to improve them. I have to start the journey now to improve them. I've identified it. That's the first step, is becoming aware that you have an issue, right? Whatever it is, maybe you're whatever the case is, and then beginning the process to fix it, and address it, and then improve your life. And as a result, make more friends, improve your relationships with your spouse, with your children, or with your extended family, the people you serve, all of that stuff. What I noticed when I stopped drinking is that I became much more aware of everything going on around me. It was almost as if drinking alcohol was reducing my awareness, if that makes any sense.
I think it does. I mean, it creates inflammation. There's a lot of bad. So I don't
Yeah.
drink. I've been like a complete health nut. Been one since probably like age 22. I
Yeah.
like occasionally I have a drink
Yeah.
here and there, but it's the same thing because I work out in the morning, so like that's just gonna bring down my thing. And also, I like to be aware. I like knowing what's going on, and I don't judge people that
Same.
drink because I go to a
Yeah.
lot of networking events where people are
Yeah.
drinking. And that's all fine, with what they do. But to your point, yeah, because I don't need anything, you know, um, to help me, bring dopamine
Exactly.
or for me to,
Yeah.
break the ice. I think sometimes some people drink in social events because they're nervous, they don't know anyone around
Yep.
there. But I think just sharing a genuine smile, like "Hi, how are you?" Like, this is my
Yeah.
name. People are receptive to that. You'll meet very few people who might
Yeah.
ignore you.
It's crazy too, because when I stopped drinking, I thought like, oh, I'm done. I finished. I'm good. I don't drink anymore. I don't have to worry about anything. Like, it's done. It's out of my life. But what's crazy is that's when the real work started. Because when I no longer had a substance to numb me and reduce my awareness, I became totally aware. And I became aware of the good, but the bad as well. I became aware of all my weaknesses as well as my strengths. And that's when I was like, damn, whoa, like this, I have to fix these things. You know what I mean? And that's the path. That's the journey. That's, to be honest with you, that is at the core of shift. It's when you're tired when you're sick and tired of being tired of the same circumstance, and you know that you need to make a change in your life. That's shift. That's the concept, and what we're talking about. Well, this was great, Rocio. I really, honestly, I got to be honest with you. I really appreciate you making time. I know you are doing a lot of big things over at Modern Rain. I'll make sure to include all of the relevant links so that our viewers can connect with you. I want to end our episode with a question I ask all our guests. And so I want to ask
Okay.
you, what does shift mean to you?
So shift to me means the building blocks of what makes you great. So I think what what you're trying to bring on is the habits and things that you're really looking deep. It's not like you're looking at someone like, oh, these are your accolades. It's like at no point did we talk about, oh, where's the latest event or what's your next move or what's your goals. It was nothing like that. It all comes internally, because at the end of the day, if your insides are not aligned with what you want, you're not going to get very far. And it comes down to the habits. So making sure that your habits are there so you could transform yourself to the better person that you wish to be.
Right on, right on. Well said. Well said. Very good. Rocio, thank you. Again, I want to just say thank you very much. I appreciate it.